welcome back to another episode of Garage Time TV. Here I am, Marshall, and we are obviously not at our home garage. Now, if you saw last episode, you know that I had said the X19 and the bus are for sale, and they still are for sale, because you can see it here behind me, but we have come across an issue. So we've been storing our X and our bus off-site from the house to keep it in a protected area. And this area actually has lifts that we can use, and so I'm going to take full advantage of that. So we actually need to do some work on the X. So I was doing a heat cycle on it, keeping it up and going and lubricated, driving it once in a while, and we started to really start overheating. So I started to do some diagnosis on that here off camera, and while doing that, our heater core went out on us, and we've got a pretty significant leak. And based on what I found when I had this on the lift earlier, is it looks like it's weeping out from between our cylinder head and our block, which means head gasket. So we're gonna need to dive into that, and I'm gonna get this up on the lift, and we're gonna look from the bottom side. But while it was running and building pressure in the cooling system, you could see it start to weep, and it was starting to drip pretty significantly. So we've got to replace that head gasket. It's good to do anyway. It is the original head gasket that was on it from when we first installed this engine way back when we first got it and did the engine swap, which was almost a year ago to the day, I think. Maybe, yeah, a year ago. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get this up on a lift and start taking a look at it. Now, before I jump into that, you may notice I'm wearing some of the merchandise. We do have X19 t-shirts and bus t-shirts and 124 shirts and 850 shirts, all available on our website. I'll put a link down in the description for that, so make sure you check it out, pick yourself up a shirt. This is like a dry fit shirt, so it's pretty nice in a garage like this. So anyway, enough of that. Let's get this up in the air and take a look underneath. So here we are under the X, and you can see we're weeping a little bit. Looks like I can tighten up some screws there, but you can see all of the wetness right here by our starter. So when I follow it up, it's gonna kind of be hard to see, but as we follow it up this way, you can see it ends right at our head. You can kind of see the spark plug in the boot and the spark plug wire, the blue wire there. That's where the head is, and it's seeping out right in between, right up there. Hopefully that shows. Let me get a better angle.
A few moments later.
All right, now that I got you in the stand, you can see all the wetness here on this side compared to the dry part of the block, and it's wet over here, and our leak is coming from right up there. Maybe you can see it now, up at the top there. Anyway, so it looks like it's seeping past our head gasket and down the side, leaks down to here, and then comes around this back side. This whole cross member on the underside is all wet, and it's dripping onto the rubber, so we don't want any of that. So we're gonna need to start stripping the top end, which is gonna be super, super fun. So you can see from our head gasket there, it's just really seeping by. So it could be just a really small crack in the head gasket. Again, it's original, it's gonna be old, it's gonna need to be replaced, especially since we've been putting a little bit more aggressive, spirited is the word, driving on this thing since that upgraded camshaft. So what we're gonna need to do is bring it back down. We're gonna remove the engine lid. We're gonna start tearing off the top end. We need to take off our belt cover, the yellow one. We're gonna need to remove the belt, so it's gonna be important that we put it at top dead center. That way when we put it back together, it's in the same place. There is a locating key on that pulley, so it wouldn't be too far off, but just to be safe, we're gonna do that. And then we're gonna need to remove all of our injection components, the intake, the exhaust. It all needs to come off to get that head up and to get the old gasket out and clean up all of that surface. It'll be a good time to clean the pistons anyway, because I'm sure they've got some carbon on them. So it's kind of a dual purpose. But we've also got to drain the cooling system and the issue with our heater core. So what I think I'm gonna do for now is just bypass it. We're gonna loop the heating system to itself and bypass the heater core. With this being an air-conditioned car, the heater cores are not made right now. So what I'm gonna have to do is take our old one out, send it off to a radiator shop to get it re-cored, and then put it back in there and re-plumb it in. But it, you know, being in Texas, how often do we really need a heater here? And am I really gonna be driving in the winter? You know, and especially with us trying to sell it, you know, is wherever it's going to want to heat. I'd much rather have the air conditioning working than the heat. So I think we're just gonna loop that for now and then attack that later and see kind of what goes on. If we're sitting on it for a while, sure, we'll do it for content for you guys. But of course, being an air conditioned car, it's a little bit trickier. So let's get the coolant drained, because that's gonna be a big part of it. And then we can start tearing apart the top end. Super excited. So after half of a day, not even half a day, it was a couple hours yesterday, is a new day. But we came in, finished up to get to the head gasket, and we are victorious. I want to look at this head gasket with you, and then we also have our entire gasket kit from VICK Auto as well, which includes a new head gasket. So I'm going to wipe off my hands here real quick, set you guys up, and we're going to go through this head gasket to see how well they match up. We finally have it out, and we're taking a look at it. Definitely original. You can see where the coolant had come through. Big open passages here, but it's going to be kind of hard to tell. You can kind of see the reflective there, but this is where the weep was coming from. And based on the side view, I know the camera's not going to pick it up super well, but it looks like it's really swollen compared to this side. Definitely sticking out a little bit, but this head gasket's also a little thin. Been through some stuff. You can kind of see a line of stuff here. It's hard to kind of tell a little bit just because of the oil and stuff kind of falling on it. So what we're going to do now is going to open our new one. And this entire gasket kit is from VICK Autosports. I'll make sure to put a link down in the description, along with the shop manual. I've got one of those here as well. That way we know our torque specs for our head gaskets, the pattern, how it's supposed to go on, and the order of operations on that. It's definitely worth having that even for just everyday repairs and reference and things. So just make sure you guys pick up one. It's all there just as Fiat intended. So this is our new head gasket. And the biggest difference you can see is, besides it being nice and new, is the sealing ring all around the outside, which I'm a big fan of compared to the factory one that had none of that. The other difference we see is that these big holes that were on the other gasket were one big one. These are just smaller pass-throughs, so you can see that there. So it looks like we're lining up okay. Some of the holes are just a little smaller, so that's a little bit smaller hole. But overall, everything else matches up. The only difference is here, we don't have the two holes for those small 10mm bolts that we pulled out, which is interesting. But I think this is for a 13 and 1500, so we're gonna see how that goes. Of course, I'd like to put those on there as well, just to help seal everything. But we can easily punch holes for that into that there. But looks good, nice new, and I'm already getting it all dirty. And I'm liking it. So now we get to reverse the entire process that we just did. And for making me feel a little better, I'm gonna look in those cylinders. I'll probably bring you along with me to see how much we can see. And if anything needs cleaned up, take a look at those cylinders while we're at it. On the engine side, I'm going to be looking at the cylinder walls, seeing if I see any crazy scoring or anything like that. I don't see any damage to the pistons. Let's see if we can lift this up a little bit here. Yeah, I don't see anything crazy damaged or anything like that. Cylinder walls look okay. Pistons are just carboned up. So we'll probably get those cleaned up as well. Just hit a wire wheel on those and get all this carbon off of here and cleaned up so it's a little bit more presentable. These are those 10mm holes I was just talking about that go here and here. There's no hole for it, so we're gonna have to take that into consideration also. I do want to clean up this mating surface because there is still some little bit of head gasket material there, and we just need to clean off some of the debris and things like that. So we're just gonna spend some time cleaning, and then we're just gonna start reassembly. I'm gonna save you the time lapse of that unless I find something interesting, but we're just going to clean and do reassembly. When it's all back together, I'll bring it back, and we'll see how it does after a fire up, top off coolant, all sorts of good stuff like that.
The next day.
Here we are, day 3 of doing the head gasket, which normally should be a one-day job, but we've had a couple delays. You know, like day 1, I forgot the head gasket. It's kind of important. So I had to come back the next day, and we got it all disassembled, head gasket put on, all of what you just saw, and started reassembling everything off camera because it's going to go much faster, and it's just the opposite of disassembly. And you know, I kind of rushed things, and we had some carnage. So you may notice that we're not 100% there because one of our intake runners is missing because there's some damage here. Yeah. So note to self, make sure this is not stuck in your intake when you're tightening those down, because when it's stuck like that, this happens. So me and my infinite wisdom just kept tightening it down. Like, yeah, that's fine. It's gonna work. It's gonna suck it right down. I'm gonna be all good, sitting against the gaskets, no big deal. Yeah, no. So, not good. So it kind of killed us yesterday. That was the end of that. But fortunately, we have the original engine that came out of this car. And here we have, out of that original engine, I pulled it off. We've got a new runner. I gotta take this old gasket off. Gonna make sure we zip tie this thing out of the way so we don't do that again. And I'm gonna take it over, I'm gonna pressure wash it because it is grimy and gross, and I've got a razor blade, so I'm gonna clean all this up. But this is the same part, same side. I think they are directional, so I made sure to get the same side just to be safe. So we're gonna spend some time. I'm gonna get over to the power washer, some soap, and really clean this stuff up. And then we can keep going and hopefully finish this thing up. I also brought some heater hose from home to do our heater core bypass until we get that all figured out. So we're gonna be able just to loop our heater to itself in a small loop and be done with it. So one thing at a time, but let's go clean these parts up because you've already got them off, might as well do it. And then we'll finish putting those on. Slowly, this time, not to break it. Don't break it, don't break it.
The next day.
All right, last day, I promise. If I would have had all my stuff and not broken other stuff and done things correctly the first time, I wouldn't be here for the fourth day. Probably could have done this in a day. Anyway, we're all put back together on the engine bay. Since we're all put back together, we have put some coolant in our system. We've topped that off, and we want to fire it up. And we want to burp the system, so we're going to let it run with the cap off. And take that off, just let it run. One thing is, you'll probably want to have a towel nearby, because when the thermostat opens, it'll gargle and burp at you, and so you'll want to just kind of cover it. That way you don't get coolant everywhere. So ask me how I know, but you're going to want to cover that loosely. That way it'll catch it as it comes up. After that is burped, we're going to let it do a full heat cycle. So we're going to let it get up to the radiator. We want the fans to come on. And one thing about bleeding the system, well, thank you, is down here under this carpet. You're going to need to get down in here, and you can see right there sticking out, little black thing, is my speed bleeder to get all the air out of the radiator. And I got that from VICK's, of course. And all you have to have is a ratchet, and this is an 8mm Allen key. It fits right on the top of it, and I just loosen it. And when you loosen it, all the air will come out of it, and then you just tighten it, let it run a little bit more, crack it, let more air come out, and then tighten it. And what I like to do is I let it continue to bleed air until I see some drips on the ground from the top of the radiator where it's leaking down. Then I'll tighten it up and let it run some more. And when I do that, that's how I know that we don't have air pockets. Again, then the thermostat will open, this will start burping, and good to go. So let's fire this thing up, and fingers crossed it's all done correctly. I have no doubt, small doubt, but a healthy doubt, but we'll make sure that everything's all good to go. I triple checked everything. What's really important, and I want to note this now, is once we do all this and we do this heat cycle, we're going to have to re-torque the head bolts. Shout out to John over at 11% Racing. I'll make sure to put a link down there for you to his Instagram. You're gonna want to follow him. He races his X19. He's got it like gutted out and all sorts of good stuff. But when you redo the head gasket, you do the heat cycle, you definitely want to retorque those head bolts just because of the expansion and cooling of the metal. And you're gonna want to retorque one more time just to make sure. Anyway, we're gonna go through this whole process, bleed all this, and then we'll take it for a spin. And if all goes well, then we will put the top back on and wash this thing because it has not been washed in a while, and our VICK Auto wheels definitely need a good cleaning. So let's knock all that out and go for a spin. Okay, so we've got our stuff all bled out, fans came on, cooled right back down just like it's supposed to. We're gonna head out into the parking lot. Doing good. Second. Doing just fine. Just like the old days, before we had an awful coolant leak. Looks like we're doing good, running just fine. So I just mentioned, well, a second ago for you, a little while for me, that you'll need to retorque the head. So to retorque the head, you have two options. One, you take the cam box back off and then do your torque sequence again for the head gasket, or there's special tools that you can get to do it while the cam box is on. Now Fiat has, of course, like a special A.10 or something or other part number, and you can find that online, and if I find them I'll put a link down in the description. But I just went the hard way because that's just how I like to do things. It's difficult, and I took the cam box back off and then retorqued them all, and they definitely had probably about an 1/8 turn more once everything had cooled back down and been put back together. So definitely want to retorque your head gaskets. Make sure you do not forget to do that. But so far we're doing great. Doesn't look like we're having any issue. Thermostat should be opening here shortly, but we're sitting at about probably 180. So we're just gonna keep rolling around. We'll probably hit the road. We just keep doing laps here, but we'll probably hit the road here and make sure everything's all good, and then we'll come back and give it a good wash. Alright guys, that's going to be the end of this episode. We got the X all nice and cleaned up. I'll probably spend more time here detailing it, getting the tires and wheels really dialed in, the interior, vacuum that out, do a little bit better on the windows, things like that, but I don't think you really want to see that. If you are wanting to see that, drop it down in the comments so I can continue to make content, and if you guys are into that thing, we'll do that. Again, this car is still available. I'll put price and availability down in the description. Fresh head gasket, just done, gone through, because we had to. So it's all back together as it should be, running great, no more leaks, hallelujah. And so now we're able to drive this thing a little bit more. I haven't driven it a whole lot just because it was leaking a little bit, it's starting to get a little hot, head gasket things. So I'm just glad it's all done, but we're gonna get it all cleaned up, all these watermarks cleaned up and out of here, and done. So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. Subscribing really, really helps the channel, so please make sure you continue to do that. We're over 3,300 subscribers so far. That is absolutely insane. I never thought we'd even get this high. So thank you so much for continuing to support the channel, even in these big gaps of no content, as life is, you know, being life. So thank you guys so much for supporting everything we do. Make sure you guys support the merchandise website. I have a link down in the description and at the end of this video. Also check out my friend Jesse over at Eldest Builds. He's got all sorts of stuff going on. He's working on a truck as well. So make sure you guys support the people, not support us. I think we're even working on a possible chemical and detailing supply sponsorship as well. So be on the lookout for that. If you guys are really looking into getting that way, how to make your X or your other car look really good. Again, so thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, we'll see ya.